Hey strangers, today's episode with Hiro Koda, the stunt coordinator and second unit director for Stranger Things, was recorded on June 2nd. It's a little bit of a chaotic time in the world right now, and it was really nice of him to take his time to talk with us and to try to spread some joy and some light to the Stranger Things fan community. As expected, he was as amazing as every other Stranger Things cast or crew member that we have talked to. I think you can feel his high energy when he talks about what he does and how much he loves it, and I think this was a great talk, so I hope you enjoy it. And as always, stay strange. Hey strangers, I totally forgot to mention that this interview was recorded via Skype, so for a few moments you might hear an echo or a pause, but that is going to be quick and just for a second, so stay tuned.
Hi, how are you?
This is Ash from the Upside Down podcast.
How are you?
I'm amazing. Thanks
Awesome.
so much for being on the call with us today.
Awesome, thank you. It's good to be here.
So I guess we'll jump right in. You're the stunt coordinator and the second unit director for Stranger Things Season 3. And we have a lot of fans who are familiar with film a little bit because my husband works in film, so every once in a while I'll pepper in some knowledge. But to our younger fans who are interested and they don't know, can you kind of explain what a stunt coordinator does?
A stunt coordinator is in charge of all of the action, even down to just seeing a cast member maybe trip over a rock or something like that. It's all about the safety of the cast and what's being performed on screen. Action-wise, I design all the action sequences for the series.
And what does a second unit director do?
Second unit director depends on what is needed, but second unit directing, I'll do the majority of all the action and the different sequences for things that they just don't have the time to do on main unit. Normally it tends to fall with doing all the stuff that we would shoot with the stunt doubles, and we shoot all the big stunts and things like that. Sometimes I'll have main cast members come in to pick up the pieces. Second unit will also be picking up pieces that are missed or needed from a sequence. If we run out of time and they just don't have the time to shoot something, it'll get bumped over to second unit. Also, there's times that second unit can be just establishing shots of different locations, or having simple drive-bys of cars for tying into the dialogue that's being done inside the car with the cast.
Oh, that's super cool.
Yeah.
Now, I know that you came into season 3 and you were probably welcomed with open arms because everyone that we've talked to from the cast and the crew has just been amazing. And we have a mutual friend, Denise, who works on the show, and she couldn't be any nicer.
She is incredible.
I'm curious, how did you get the gig?
Well, let's see. The first AD, Tudor Jones, is who I could say threw my name into the hat. There was a very big fight sequence that was being started early on in the season. Sean Levy was directing. Tudor Jones put my name in. It required a lot of wire work and stuff. It was the sauna sequence with Dacre when he's attacking all the kids. And so they brought me in for that sequence to sort of set that up, and also transitioning me into sort of taking over the show. The show was picking up on action, and I guess they wanted to go a different direction this season.
One of the things I was really curious about is how are stunts planned for each season with the cast and the crew members? For example, are you brought in once the script is written at the beginning, or is it something that you do episode by episode?
I go through, and the scripts are coming out all at different times, and I have to read the scripts and I have to break them down. I mean, my process is a bit long, but I go through the scripts, break them down by pulling out all the stunts and not really even paying attention to what's happening just the story-wise, and I just get the stunt beats out of it, and then I have to go back and read it and understand what is happening in the sequences and what the storyline is following, and then I go back and read it again just as a fan and try to leave everything else out so I can really get into the story. And then from there, after I've pulled out what I believe are stunts and what are needed for safety and things like that, then we have several meetings production meetings, and then we have like our individual meetings with the directors just to go through all the stunt beats and things like that, and discussing what is planned and what is what I have planned to design for the action. And what I do normally too is I'll shoot a previs with my stunt doubles, and that also I'll take that into the directors and allow them to take a look at it and say, hey, what do you like about this? What do you don't like about it? So we can go back during our rehearsal and prep time so that by the time we get on set, everybody's on the same page and we know what's going on.
Oh, cool. Now, you use the term a previs. Is that like a pre-visualization? You're kind of shooting what the scene could look like?
Exactly. It's a stunt previs. It's a live action one, and I'll shoot it with the stunt doubles, and I'll usually shoot it the way that I would shoot it on my, like if I was directing a second unit. So I'll cut it together at the end, so it's all a full cut piece together, so they can get an idea and a feel of what it's going to be. I'll even add music and sound effects to give them the full feeling of what I'm envisioning for the scene.
It seems like you have to do a lot of work. How big is your team?
My team varies depending on how much stunts we have going on. I mean, I'm hiring people throughout the season on and off, and they're coming in and out. And it's, all the cast members have doubles, and then I have like ND, which is nondescript characters. And then I'll have just people that are, sometimes I'll have stunt people that if there's a character that has maybe like one piece of dialogue, I'll throw them in the mix for, into casting so that they can cast a stunt person. Then we don't have to double them for anything if they have action. So the stunt team varies. It goes from having one person for this scene to having, 25 people in this scene. So it just depends on the scene.
Now, I know that each cast member has a body double for their stunts, but for the cast members that do their own stunts, and I guess even for the body doubles, what is the prep time once you've determined what the stunts are going to be? How much time does it take to get them used to what the stunt's going to be? I imagine there's a lot of practice time.
We have lots of, Stranger Things, and this production is incredible with like prep. There's so many meetings and so much time that we get prior to, which is very nice to have. And of course, once we get rolling on a season, it gets harder and harder as we're going, and episodes start overlapping each other and things like that. Because while I'm shooting one episode, I'm prepping the next block or the next episode. And, so it can get a little bit busy in that sense. But the stunt people that I hire, I tend to hire all of the same people that I know can get the job done. And I'm very particular with stunt doubles. So I want to make sure that they look like they're actors, size, height, hair, everything that I can get, so we can get away with as much as we can with them. Because if you watch something and you think that it was the actor, then we did our job, because it should be seamless with what the cast is doing. Now, as far as bringing in like cast members, during prep and prior to, it's all about scheduling and figuring out the times that we can get cast members in to rehearse each of those sequences so that they understand what is happening and they're comfortable with everything and being able to perform on the day, because they don't only have to do some, stunt fighting or whatever they're going to be doing, but they also have to be in their character and deliver dialogue and things like that. So
now in season 3, there's a lot of fight sequences. I would say it's probably the most heavy of any of the seasons. You have scenes where you have Hopper and he's fighting Grigori, but then you also have scenes where you have Eleven where she's fighting, a mind flayer that isn't really there. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between what it's like to film two actors doing a stunt together versus an actor doing a stunt with, I'm assuming, a green screen or maybe someone in a bodysuit with some kind of electronics on them?
Yeah, it's definitely always easier when you have bodies to deal with. So having two people fighting that are there, it's always much easier. It's much easier for me to shoot my previs because I have my two stunt doubles there, performing for me while I'm shooting our previs to get a good idea of what's going on. When we have cast working with like the mind flayer, a lot of times, when Eleven was working, when she was being attacked, that's the part that I really like, that challenge in designing that type of action is understanding what this creature is and what its power is and how much strength it has and what the directors, want in their vision, because I want to make sure I keep their vision going. And to be able to create this. I mean, these actors, my hat's off to them, because they have to perform sometimes to nothing, or they perform to a stunt guy that's there in like a green suit or a red suit with a silver hat. And, it may look funny on set, but in the end, it's this giant, scary creature. But, the Duffer Brothers and even Sean Levy as well, they set the tone on set, which they're so incredible. It's like, it's an honor to be able to second unit direct for those guys, and to be able to be on set and watch what they do. They play music, they get the cast, even the crew gets into just the vibe of the scene. And so it really helps them to perform with if something's not there, to perform in there. Sean Levy's got a lot of energy, and he's like, and it's there and it's going to attack. And, it's just energy is there, and it's so high, and it's like, it's so fun to watch and see it all come together in the end.
It sounds like it's awesome. I'm wondering, when you're working with, let's say, David versus Millie, do you feel a higher sense of anxiety knowing that you're dealing with a minor doing some kind of crazy stunt? Even though they do have body doubles, I know that she does some of her work.
Yeah, it's very safety is my number one priority, and dealing with children is always, something that is on my mind, in making sure that they are completely safe with what we're trying to do. And I want to make sure that they are completely comfortable with everything. I mean, working with David, obviously he's an adult, and he's very involved in his action and getting involved with the fight. He's so good with his fights, and it makes things a lot easier, obviously, with him, and I can tend to relax a little bit more. But with the children, especially, dealing with Millie and that whole sequence in the cabin and having to fly her on wires, and the stuff in the void where she was in some wires and things like that, it's always, something that I'm like completely, I'm always thinking of safety with them and making sure that they're safe. But my thing with them is to get them in during prep, during rehearsals, get them in those crazy rigs that we put together, and make them feel comfortable with it, and building a trust level with them that they feel comfortable and they know that they're going to be safe.
How much rehearsal time would Millie get for something like that? I'm just using her as an example because she does a lot of the bigger stunts. But, when she's up on a wire, is that something that you would just bring her in for the day and you just kind of go through it with her? Or is that something that has to really be, I'm sure it's planned out, but she also probably has limited time to kind of practice those stunts. How does that work?
Yeah, that's the other challenge is working with children, is the time that we have with them, because they have to do their schooling. So they don't have as much time on set as the adults do. So it goes back to the scheduling, and like Tudor and Richard, the two ADs, they're just amazing with the way they plan and schedule things. And if I go to them and say, I need to get with Millie, or I need to get with Caleb, or I need to, any of the kids, and I need this time to rehearse them and go through that, they get me that time. But I always do it prior to, and it could be a day, it could be 2 days, it could be 3 days. It just depends on how big the gag is and where they are comfort level. Once they leave at the end of the day, if I feel like they're completely comfortable, then we can go to shoot. Otherwise, I'll take another day to rehearse with them.
Now, I know that you directed one of the finale showcase scenes, which I think was the big battle that was between Hopper and Grigori. And I'm curious, how did that come about? Is it normal for a stunt coordinator to direct a scene like that? Is it just easier?
The scheduling, there was so much into that whole sequence. I mean, the whole thing at the end was a massive fight. It was a massive, beautiful set that we got to shoot on. And because there was so much involved in that, I would imagine is why it was put over to second unit. I mean, and it's all about, having this honor to be able to direct the finale like that. It was such an honor that the Duffer Brothers gave me that opportunity to do that. I even was able to have, David Harbour and Andre on my unit with me. The biggest challenge that we did have, and our schedule was crazy at the end of that season anyway. So it was like we were all over the place trying to finish everything up. So there was no time to have main units shoot that. They had so much other stuff to shoot as well. But the biggest challenge that we did have with that is that David was needed on, my unit as well as main unit with the Duffer Brothers. So it was like we had 4.5 days to shoot that sequence, and we had to shoot maybe a half a day with David, and then he would shoot over to first unit. And then I would finish my day with the stunt doubles and Andre was there was the whole time. That guy was amazing. It was incredible. He just like kind of stuck with us all day, and he just toughed it out with, he did the first half of the day with David, and then the second half of the day he was dealing with the double all day. So he worked his ass off, and it was a lot of fun. I was really proud of David and Andre. And my stunt doubles, they all did an amazing job for that sequence.
Yeah, it had a really amazing look. So I don't know why it didn't dawn on me. Someone else might have directed that, but was that one of the first times that you've done a directing of a stunt coordination scene? I know that you said that you do it for the pre-vis, but was this the first time that you actually did it on camera?
No, I've been second unit directing for quite a while. I got my DGA card in 2000.
Oh, okay.
So I've been second unit directing for a while, and so that wasn't new, but it was for that big of a sequence on this show for the bros was quite amazing.
Yeah, you've been doing some great shows. I looked it up. You did Ozark and Cobra Kai and Big Little Lies and Sons of Anarchy, which I'm obsessed with that show, but that's a conversation for another day. I'm curious, do you ever get stunned by any of the sets that you work on? And I think I'm thinking specifically of the Starcourt Mall. I was a background extra, so I actually got the privilege to go and see that Starcourt Mall, and it was just shocking, like how beautiful and how amazing the details were. What is it like when you walk in and you're like, I've got to do stunts within this area?
It's a playground. It's just a playground. Like when you walk into these massive sets, and it's just you see so many different things that you could do, and it really just becomes a playground for a stunt person. And my mind just starts going all over the place, trying to figure out, what we can do in there, and what we're capable of doing practically. And so yeah, I mean the sets were incredible. Season 3. I mean, going into the Starcourt Mall, that was an actual practical mall. You were there, so and it's just like, how are we going to do all of this? But I mean, the prep that this show entails is like it's incredible that everybody's how hard everybody works. This crew is such a hardworking crew, and it's a fun show to be a part of.
When you're building out your stunts, when you're thinking about what you're going to be doing, do you ever coordinate with the art department in advance?
I will coordinate with every single department. Our department is one for sure, depending on, what we are doing in those different sets and locations and things like that. And they're very helpful in setting up things. Like if I'm doing a lot of things with actors and things like that, I got to look out for all sharp objects and things like that are going to be, that are going to potentially be harmful during a fight. So they will remove those, or we will rubberize them, or we will put safety pads around them and incorporate it into the set so we don't have, those dangerous things in there. And even I talk to props, every single prop that we deal with, if it's an action sequence, every prop has to be sort of discussed, and what's going to be rubber, when it's going to be real, or, whatnot, and things like that. I deal with hair and makeup, having to, sometimes we shoot things out of order. And if we're shooting a sequence like that has happened after a fight, they need to know, what do they look like after this fight? How bad did they get beat up? So we got to work on like what the injuries are and things like that. So it's every single department, and greens. I work with greens on, if I'm out in the woods working at, in the woods for anything, they help me with clearing out areas where things are going to be happen to make sure there's no, it's so much. There's so many departments that are involved in these, to make these shows.
My husband was working on a show, and he said that your guys, they are practicing all day long. Like they're just practicing to get everything right. I'm curious, how often are you guys on set? I know when I talked to Tina Rowden, who you probably know is the still photographer for Stranger Things, she was saying that her schedule's a little bit more flexible. She can come and go, but are you more like standard crew, you're there from dusk till dawn?
I am on every day. I'm not necessarily on set if it's just strictly a dialogue scene, but if I'm not on set, I'm in the rehearsal hall rehearsing and prepping something.
Oh, that's interesting. Your doubles, are they considered cast or crew?
They're cast. The stunt doubles are considered cast.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. I'm curious, what made you get into stunts as a career?
I got my SAG card when I was 12 years old doing a a national commercial for a high C drink.
Nice.
And I wanted to, I've always enjoyed the entertainment industry. But my father trained he trained several people, but he's my martial arts instructor. But he trained a girl that was a stunt woman in Hollywood, and her husband was part of a stunt group called Stunts Unlimited, and she took me when I was 12 years old to a couple of sets, and they had some rehearsals going on, stunt rehearsals, and watching these guys do stunts since I was 12 years old, I was like, that's what I want to do. I'm going to be a stuntman. It was the most incredible thing I watched ever. And so, yeah, I mean, I turned 16. I talked my parents into letting me get my GED, and I moved out of where I was living. I don't want to say where I was. I moved to LA to become a stuntman. I had no idea how I was going to do it, but I was determined to do it. And that's what I did. My first sort of big gig that I did, I fell into doing the Power Rangers. I did the first 7 seasons of Power Rangers.
Yeah, I read that. That's amazing. A non-Stranger Things question. I know that you did a fellow podcaster's podcast, the Cobra Kai cast. I love them, and I love that show, Cobra Kai. I'm wondering, you were probably a kid when the original movie came out. What was it like? Is it a surreal experience for you to do the stunts now with those actors?
It was so surreal to the first time I walked on that set and saw those cast members there. And that show is so much fun. That's an amazing cast and crew as well. And like, I'm stuck in these like old 80s shows, like all back in the 80s. But anyway, yeah, I mean, it was incredible to go back. That show meant so much to me when I was a kid, and I was a kid when that movie came out, and it was a huge influence in my life. My father was my karate instructor since I was, 2 years old. So it's been a big part of my life, and to be able to be in that show now and being able to coordinate that show, I even second unit direct on there as well. And it's an incredible show to be a part of.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to meet Ralph and Billy at Dragon Con, and it was a surreal moment for me for sure.
I'm such a huge fan of those guys, and I mean Ralph, all his shows, The Outsider, and there's so many shows that I'm a huge fan of his, and I don't get too starstruck when I see people, but seeing those guys was pretty cool. They're really cool guys, down to earth, just and they work hard as anybody else does, and they want to, they're much older now, but they work hard, those guys, to make sure that they're able to deliver what they need to deliver on screen.
Yeah, they couldn't have been nicer. I mean, when we met them, they were so friendly. My 7-year-old gets really nervous around people, and William Zabka kind of just like stopped the line and was like, hey, I'm going to talk to this kid for a bit. So it was pretty rad.
Yeah, he's pretty cool. He loves kids, man. He's so good with kids.
Are there any TV shows or films that you haven't worked on yet? It feels like your resume is so long, but is there something that you haven't worked on that you would like to work on?
Oh, man. That's a good question. I don't know. I'm sure there's something. I have to think about that for a second. I get so into what I'm doing at the moment that I don't even have time to even think about that stuff. And I say that before, and then all of a sudden I'm doing a show like Ozark. I came in on that show as season 3, and it was, a show that I'm a fan of, and just being able to be a part of anything like that is pretty incredible. Gosh, what shows? You've stumped me on that one. I would like to do anything. I'm good with anything.
I feel like it might be a hard question for you to answer because you've been so fortunate to work on some of, great television shows already. So what would you recommend for kids maybe that are interested in doing stunts? What should they do to kind of prep for this if it's something they're interested in adulthood? My youngest, he's 7 years old, and that's all he wants to do. He
wants to be a stuntman. But, the thing that I tell people that they need to do is they need to take a martial arts, get into gymnastics, get into whatever, motocross, some kind of special. They need to start learning. And if they're interested in doing that as a kid and moving into an adulthood to be a stunt performer, having that in their pocket is going to be a plus. Any, special abilities is going to be good for them. And then, I have adults that are asking all the time, how do I get into stunts and what do I want to do? And it's just asking them what they can do special that is different from anybody else. And there's a stunt school. It's called the Stunt Performers Academy, ran by Bonzai Vitale, that I usually try to send everybody to, because if they can make it through that course, then, they can probably make it as a stunt person.
In addition to knowing how to do, backflips or take a hit, is it important for them to know rigging? Would they need rigging skills, or is that a separate entity?
It is a completely separate entity, but as a performer, you don't necessarily have to be a rigger, but to learn about the rigging and all the wire work that goes on, it's very important that you do learn that, because if you're going to be a performer and riding in a wire, you want to know how that rig is working that's flying you around. And if you have the understanding of what you're doing, not what you're doing, because they obviously are doing the gag, but if they have the understanding of how the wire rig works, then they're going to make their performance much better. If they have no idea and they just jump in a line, they're putting their trust and safety into someone else's hands. But if they understand the concept of the rigging and how it works, they can see things that might not work, and they're able to communicate with their riggers. Hey, this isn't working much for me on this, because it's different with everybody. Everybody's different in a wire.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we have a section where we let fans send in questions, so we pulled out just a couple. Jack Onapa wants to know, how did you throw Billy through the wall in the sauna test, and how many takes did you have to do to make that scene work?
It was a two-part section, because the interior of the sauna room was on a sound stage, where we were able to control, the lighting and all that stuff, and we had built the set inside of the soundstage, and then the exterior part was on an actual location. And so inside, when we threw him into a wall. He never busted through that wall in the set, and we did that a few times, I think, with his stunt double. And then on the actual location is where he came out through the wall. It was a exterior piece built onto that location. We built a fake wall that matched what we had, and our stunt guy ran and just busted through it. And we did that one once. They set 2 cameras and set it up once. I think we had the chance to do it 3 times, but the first take was actually perfect. Cameras caught it, and we didn't have to do it again.
I'm curious how it worked, because you have to use some kind of rigging or wiring, but Dacre, and I'm assuming his body double or his stunt double, they were shirtless. How did you do that with their bare skin? With their pads? How did that work?
That was quite the challenge for that sequence, because he was shirtless, and we had to develop these interesting rigs to, fly Dacre around in that room. And Dacre rode some of the wires and flying his stunt double and flying him into walls and things like that. But he did it with no pads. Because he was shirtless, and he was prepared for all of that. There was certain things that we did pad up some of the walls to look as if they were real brick, but they were slightly padded in a way to help protection on him as he's hitting it with his bare back. And then a sound effect is added in, so it's going to make it sound, terrible.
I know that Dacre was in the new Power Rangers. Did you guys talk about Power Rangers at all?
I think that was something that came up pretty early on when we first started the show, is that someone said, hey, Dacre, he's a Power Ranger too. So it did come up. I didn't work on the film, but we did have some chats about it.
Okay, well, M457 says, how was the scene where 11 almost gets pulled out of the cabin by the Mind Flayer filmed?
How was it filmed? How was that?
I wish I could give you more, but that's all it says.
We had a stunt double for her as well, and we rode the stunt double and her both on wires. And that was, that was an interesting one to film, because there was this giant creature that was yanking her from the ground up and trying to pull her out and through the ceiling, and having to make it believable that this thing was grabbing her by the ankle and dragging her. So that was quite challenging. Plus being able to, deal with Millie as a child and a minor and making sure that she was safe throughout that sequence.
Totally. Noni Harbor wants to know, she's heard that sometimes body doubles are used in low action sequences, and she was curious why that might be.
Stunt doubles are used at various times depending on what the sequence requires. I mean, sometimes, and I guess you would say a low action scene would be maybe just seeing somebody run across a field, and you don't, you use a stunt double for that instead. But if we're looking at the person's back and they're just running across a field, maybe sometimes it's because an actor doesn't want to do it, or it's like, hey, you're not seeing my face, use the double, and they're going to run across this field. So that would be, the reason for it. Sometimes, there's certain things that you wouldn't think that a double would be used, but, when we're doing car sequences and you have a car sliding around a corner or something like that, obviously the driver is a stunt double, but sometimes if there's passengers, the actor in the passenger seat is going to be stunt doubled, even though he's not doing anything but sitting as a passenger. But you don't want to put an actor in that danger of sliding a car around or hitting something or things like that. So, a stunt double would be used for that.
So it seems like you're in charge of, or at least play a role in some part of everything, in casting the stunt doubles, in the rigging, in figuring out, what the stunts are going to be, in the car action sequences. That seems pretty extensive. How far in advance do you need to plan?
As much time as I can get is what I ask for. As soon as I get a script and I break it down and I pull things out that I know are going to take some time, I try to get on those as quick as I can as far as starting prep and rehearsal. But, like I said, the scheduling on the show, they give me the time. If I get to them and tell them, hey, I need this, I get that time. And some stuff doesn't take as long, and I can push those off to the side and I can say, hey, we can deal with that on the day. It's not that big of a deal. But there's plenty of things on that show that need time to rehearse and time to prep, and also just time for everybody to know what's going on so they can figure out exactly how they want to shoot it as well.
Do you ever have to work on dual shows at the same time?
I have, and it's very difficult. I did last year. I was on The Outsider, HBO's The Outsider.
That's my husband worked on that show.
Okay. I started that show, and then and Jason Bateman was on there. He's incredible, and he brought me over to Ozark, and they sort of overlapped. So I was doing the two of those together, and then as Outsider ended, I was only on Ozark, and then I started Cobra Kai. So there was an overlap on that as well. So it's difficult prepping two different shows, but I needed a break. I needed a break.
Yeah.
So, but I have done that before.
Well, I'm super excited for season 4, and I just wanted to thank you for taking time to talk to me today, especially with all of the chaos and everything that's happening in the world right now. I think it's cool that we can bring some joy to Stranger Things fans who are craving, any kind of new content that they can get.
Absolutely. And the fans are what drive us to what we do, man. It's a lot of fun.
Well, you couldn't have been nicer. You're just like every other cast member or crew member that I've talked to. It's been really rad talking to you, and I thank you a lot for your time.
You too. Thank you so much. Have a good day and stay safe out there.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Upside Down podcast hosted by Sisters Ash and Tori. For more information, visit our website at theupsidedownpod.com. You can also contact us at theupsidedownpod@gmail.com, as well as follow us on our Facebook and Instagram under the Upside Down Podcast. Episodes are released every other Monday, so be sure to subscribe. If you love the podcast, be sure to review us on whatever you listen to us on. Thanks again. Stay strange.